Right, today is October 17th. This is our weekly meeting for development tasks for Backdrop CMS. Before we get into code stuff, I wanted to quickly welcome Alex Shapka, who recently applied for a contributed module maintainership and ported the Search Kurumo module from Drupal. New project releases this week include the Search Kurumo module from Drupal. So that went in really fast, which is great. We also have a release of the statistics module from Drupal 4 and Drupal 7. If anyone wanted that, there's now a contrib version out. And Bead, which is a command line tool similar to Drush, but specifically created for Backdrop, has its first release too. That's it for community and contrib updates. Let's move over to Backdrop CMS.
All right, so it's been another busy week in the world of Backdrop. As planned during last week's dev meeting, we made a release for Backdrop 1.14.1 that came out on Sunday, a couple days ago. So it's great to have that out in the wild now. I think this was also like we were a little bit late in our pushing out after a minor release. We normally wait 2 weeks and then we push out to all of the various upstreams like Pantheon and platform and things like that. And it took us a little bit longer than expected to get at 1.14.1, but now that it's out, those upstreams are now all updated. And our demo, of course, when you click the try out Backdrop, is now using the latest version. So that's great to have gotten 1.14.1 out there. Some of the notable fixes include we fixed the display of the header region when you use a flexible layout, issue 4066. So that makes it so that the flexible layouts now look nice when you use them with the basis theme and the header that goes across the top. This long-standing issue that the views is none of operator has been broken for a long time. Issue 3614, we pushed out that fix finally, and we pushed out one almost complete set of cross ports from views. The big meta issue is 3685, and all of the cross ports from views 3.12 have been moved over. There's still 3 remaining cross ports there, 2 that just need rerolls and 1 that probably won't come over at all because it might not apply to Backdrop due to differences in the config system. So yeah, 1.14.1, it was great to get those things out there, all of those big kind of issues that we've been talking about for several weeks or sometimes months have been cleared out. But I was looking over the list for 1.14.2, the next version that we'll be putting out just as needed. And we didn't have any priority items left. There's still flexible templates. There's a bunch of follow-up issues and a big meta at 4046, although that classes in the header region was the really big item that was an issue with it. So we have a few more follow-ups there, well, several more follow-ups that could be pursued. But I think it's an open question at this point. Like, do we have other items that are high priority bug fixes that we should start prioritizing during these meetings? So open the floor. You guys have any suggestions or anything that we've been facing for a long time that has been struggling?
You asked for high priority bug fixes?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know if it's high priority, but I just ran into this one with that I'd like to fix, but I just need some input on. I posted it in Gitter. It's not in the agenda, but it's the issue where the availability of tokens when you do in views. If you do rewrite the page, that the tokens aren't there when you first do it, and then if you save the view and then reopen it, they're there. And it was really frustrating for me when I ran into it this week. It's easy to kind of get around once you figure it out, but if there's an easy solution, I'd be happy to write a pull request, but I'm not sure how to solve it. There's a little discussion there. If anybody wants to look at it and give me some ideas on where to start, I'd be happy to see if I could take a stab at trying to fix that.
That bothers me every time I run into it too. So I'm glad you found it.
And I was hoping it's not maybe a really hard one to fix, but it might be. I don't know.
So one thing that I would like milestoned is 4125, and that's the capitalization of the labels in field sets. It's not a high priority, but I think it's an easy one to get out of the way. So it's a set of 3, I think, issues, one of which we nursed that sort of like make it odd to be working with the admin UI. One we got out of the way, it was the fact that the labels for the field sets were not bolded anymore. We got that merged in the previous, in 114.1. Then it's this one, 4125. And then the other one is that we need to introduce some padding on the elements that are within its option, like in field API fields, so that there's some structure, because sometimes you look at the whole thing and it's like a series of checkboxes and radio buttons that seem that they're together. So there needs to be some nesting, especially when you have nested items. I can't remember the issue number for that second issue that I'm mentioning, but yeah, let's start by fixing something at a time. So do you guys think that we can sort of like get that done for 114.2?
The capitalization one, or
Yes.
which one?
Yes. Yeah, that's the one.
I just commentary. I looked at this one and went through my local and just turned off all the text transforms uppercase on everything, which would be all 5 of these items all combined. And I wasn't actually sure about it. I felt like it lost something, like actually, you know, the capitalization was added for design reasons, I'm sure. And so, but I also kind of found, I don't know, it wasn't quite the home run that I thought it would be, like just blanket turning off all of them. However, I do think that some things are more important than others, like the one that you have right now, like field sets, and I think probably table cells as well. But I think some of those are going to be clear wins, whereas things like primary tabs, maybe not.
Yeah. So you're talking about the meta issue now, 4124, which is 6.2. Yeah. So I was talking about the specific for the field sets to get that out of the way. And then now that you mentioned the tables, the table headers, especially table headers are being used in field items with multiple cardinality, like unlimited. And having fields, and these do not have actual labels for them. So we sort of like use the fields, the table header as the field label. And then you have a series of normal labels in the form, and then you have those that stand out. It's like, yeah, I think I have some screenshots. I've been working on another issue. I can't remember right now, but I'll point to that at some point when I find it. So maybe it does make sense to do it for table headers as well. But yeah, I agree with you that when I disabled it for tabs, local tasks, it didn't make sense. It's sort of like, yeah.
And some things like buttons, maybe, I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
anyway, but I like this approach that basically you've got one issue for each of them, for each of the different elements, and then we can discuss them all individually.
Yeah, and we have the big meta for it. So if we missed anything, we can add it there and treat it one by one. So yeah, if you guys agree with that, that 4125 one, I have milestoned it already. Maybe you can just put the milestone and we can focus on it.
Jen, you've made a big list of things suddenly. You want to talk through what you put in the agenda here?
Yeah, so since you had asked if anyone has any bugs they wanted added, I think we already have a process for this, and I don't know if we should try and use this and see if it works. But a couple weeks ago, Gregory created this bugs board, which has like high priority bugs in the left, and then all the other bugs on the right, arbitrarily organized based on whoever's organizing them at the time. But this might be a tool we could use for deciding like which bugs should become high priority bugs in the next bug fix release, because then that way the people who are looking at this board and the people who are looking at these meeting agendas will have the same set of priorities. So I just highlighted three or two of the three that were in the high priority section. I added them. One of them is an issue that you created, Nate, about main page content is sometimes duplicated. I think this has to do with layouts. And then another one was one Gregory created about how modules named Cynthias that are installed with the project installer cannot be updated with the project installer. And those were the only two high level ones that I agreed with. There's also this other one, which we need some feedback on, about theme cache busting by adding a token to the end of image query strings. So
yeah, that one is actually a blocker for a smaller, not bug, but a task that I would like to do, the automatic creation of flexible, icons for flexible layouts, which is really cool. So
it's not really a blocker.
Yes, I know.
It's sort of a blocker.
We can,
it could
yeah,
be a solution for it.
Yeah, what I'm thinking is I'll file a separate pull request for that issue so that it uses randomized names, and maybe we can get that in sooner than having to wait for that. Because I think that was my initial solution. I just didn't like the fact that it was just random names.
It is a little sloppy, but I really don't think anyone's ever going to be like trying to access that image by itself. So I'm not sure there's a use case for preventing it to get in because of the other thing. But we did decide to add another thing. We could fix it later if we wanted to. So anyway, I just wanted to draw attention to the fact that we have this bugs list thing, this bugs board that I think was requested by Doc Wilmot, created by Gregory, about like, we have a lot of bugs. Should we maybe prioritize them? So we have these like milestone candidate labels. So I was thinking, Gregory, maybe a better way for managing big bucket versus smaller bucket would be all bugs go in the big bucket. Ones that are labeled with milestone candidates go in smaller. And then the ones that have been tagged with a milestone candidate go in high priority. And that way we could totally automate the board. And it would just be a better way for people to see any given thing. But that would mean that whoever was working on them would need to be like adding the right labels in order to get them.
Yeah, so the thing,
place to place.
I agree that it would help with automating things, but sometimes smaller bugs with smaller importance are easier to fix, and they sort of like get prioritized, and they reach the point where they do get milestones. They're not necessarily high priority ones.
Right, but those all have the good first issue label?
I'm not sure. The easy ones, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, could actually.
We could put that in here too. Like we could add another column that was like quick fixes or something.
Yes, low hanging fruit or whatever.
Yeah.
So one cool thing that I discovered that how this board works is that as you progress issues from the left to the right with the intention to go to closed and fixed, which is actually automated, you could the ones that are in the fixed section with fixed bug release that we have, you can archive them, and you can do that in bulk, like using the three dots at the top of the closed fix thing. And I thought that it was removing the actual sort of like assignment of the project, but it actually keeps them as archived. So we can have sort of like a historic thing of, even all the fixed ones.
That were fixed in 1.x or something, yeah.
Yes, exactly. So, yeah.
Nate, are you looking at an issue right now? You look very focused.
No, I was looking at the board, the bug board that Clonos put together.
I think the issue we're trying to solve is that like if somebody has some time on their hands and they want to know what to work on next, it's hard to look at the issue queue and figure out what your priority should be. And so giving people a different way to slice the same cake that might be more manageable. So rather than looking at like, oh, there's 4,000 bugs, trying to like narrow them down to.
Yeah. And at this point, let me say that the issues that I have put there are just for testing purposes. So it's nothing fixed, and it's things that I have added there. I think maybe team might have added one or two more.
But I think it could be good to use this like right now. Like if we figure out priority issues are, let's add them in here too. And then we can try and use it all together.
Yeah, and see how we use the agenda and we type the things that we have. Maybe instead of the agenda, we just have this, and then we move it around and we prioritize it. And instead of having it in the actual agenda, we can work off that list.
Yeah, that'd be good.
I mean, that's what boards are being used for. It's my understanding. Our PMs use it a lot. They love it. So yes, my point was that feel free to remove issues from that list entirely and or move them around to different columns. And also I thought that maybe for core committers like yourself, Nate and Jeff, it might help to actually have a list of, you can still filter by RTBC tag, but it might be sort of like helping you having an overview of where the bags are starting and focusing on the RTBC column there.
All right, well, so the items that we've got pulled out here include, let's see, I'll run over these briefly. We'll see about it if we talk about these every week. But the items that are in the bug board that are of priority or of note include installed projects cannot be updated. So if you use the installer module, but then to install a module, then apparently you cannot update it sometimes. And so this is issue 3997. Just a bug report, doesn't yet have any. It looks like some people have confirmed that this has happened. Confirmed. The problem with updates has nothing to do with permissions. So it's been confirmed, but there's no pull request or any code behind it yet. So this is an issue that just needs a developer to help take a look at. Issue 3997. That issue that Tim was talking about earlier, the replacement patterns or the tokens, wasn't showing up on the first loading of configuring view. That's issue 1928. Also looking for help. No pull request on that or anything yet. Let's see. This main page content duplicated, issue 2691. An issue with layouts. Oh, yeah, this is also our priority. I thought that this one had a pull request, but it does not. Okay, yeah, and Graham72 reported this one a long time ago. Hasn't been looked at recently yet, though.
I think there are multiple issues for this, and it looked like it was fixed at one point. I don't know. I just remember I did deal with this in the last week, and I looked it up, and there was one ticket that looked like it was fixed, and then there was another. It's kind of confusing, but I definitely experienced it this week a couple of times.
Okay, so the issue still exists.
Yeah,
you're saying.
Yes.
Okay. That's issue 2691. So those three items, those are the only ones that we'll kind of call out. There's also the views crossboards, that big meta issue 3685 that we're continuing to crank through. I think those continue to have lots of patches that are already ported and lots of open pull requests that are pending either review or committer work of actually going through and pushing those all through. So
and
is that right, Craig?
Yeah, we raised some more for crossboards for the date module and for the link module. We need to keep them up to date as well. They're not as outdated as views and as important as in views. Important saying they're equally important, but views is being used everywhere. It's integrated heavily, so it's good that we have feature parity. One other issue that I would like to mention is 4072, which is the blocks. The blocks report page listing, it uses UUIDs instead of, but I'm not gonna classify it as high priority. It's just in the sort of lesser, the list.
Yeah, it's just ugly.
Yes, exactly. So I classify, I put things there when they're things that people are easy to come across and it makes the product look broken. Like without even trying to do anything. It's just you visit a page and you say, hey, what's that? Yeah. It's like, what the fuck's? Yeah.
Okay, let's move on. So we've got like some new items now for bug fixes for 1.14.2. 1.15 will be the next minor version that will come out January 15th, 2020. And we've got a slew of kind of new features that we'd like to get implemented. And some of the advocates are not present in this meeting, so we'll kind of skim through some of these things. Add an image library modal to image fields, issue 3297. This would make it so you could select an image from a modal like you do in the rich text editor when you're using an image field. It's a great feature. There's no updates yet. Lauren is the advocate for this issue, but is looking for help on implementation. Auto menu settings in core, issue 1610. BW Panda is the advocate for this one. This makes it so that you can provide a default menu item when you're creating content. Like if you create a page, it'll automatically put it in the primary menu, for example. This one has a pull request. It needs review right now, but we need some help fixing, maybe even writing and fixing tests in this one.
I said I was going to help with that last weekend. I couldn't find the time. Maybe this weekend might be the time. So what happened is because we've changed the defaults for the page content type, and that's what's being used in the tests, Peter tried to adapt those tests. I think that we should switch those to use the post type, and that will immediately fix those tests. But at the same time, we should add new tests, including the page type, to account for that new functionality. So this is tests wise what we need to do, and I think after that it's going to be pretty much STBC.
Great. Yeah, that one, the actual code change was a lot smaller than I would have expected. Very simple change.
Yes.
Yeah, and then updating tests, not so simple.
Well,
next up is the recent news block adding to the dashboard. Tim is the advocate for this issue 3566. Tim, do you have anything to report?
Nope, sorry, no updates, but it's on my agenda.
It's quite all right. Great. Next up is Jen's issue, move the contents of the manage file display onto the manage display page, issue 4031. I'll just read it. No updates since last week. Let's see, this is when everybody gets all sheepish and being like, I did a lot of stuff this week, I swear, which you did. Everybody did a lot of stuff this week. So let's, I'll have my turn saying this. Actually, I'm just going to go ahead and do it. Signatures on digital package or digital signatures on packages, issue 1992. I'm the advocate for this one. No progress on this issue this week.
You were looking for an excuse.
Oh boy.
I have no update either for 1575. So where we're left with that is it almost got in with the 1.14 release, but then we discovered that it was breaking a few things. So the last status of that is that Doc Wilmot proposed, I think, that would be less intrusive, I would say, or safer, more future-proof. And we just need to refactor it to that. It's just I didn't get to do it. We have a long time, like a few months till 1.15, so I'm focusing mostly on this other tasks. But yeah, I think that has a good chance of getting in next time.
Yeah, for sure. This one that we added just before the start of the meeting, Joseph hasn't left yet. That's great. Issue number 74, add entity cache to core. Joseph had been working on this during Bad Camp and has posted a pull request that adds entity cache back to core as well as some benchmarks, which is pretty cool. Joseph, do you have some time to give us an update on where that stands and if there's anything really preventing it from moving forward?
Sure. So the functionality is all in there. There's only really one problem with it at the moment, and that's that one of the tests was I believe this was the link module, would would create a node, and then try to node load it. And if they used the reset parameter on node load, then there would be no field data in the node object that got returned. But if I just removed the reset parameter on the node load, then everything worked fine. And Doc Wilmot and I have been looking at this, and we're not really sure why that's the case.
Okay, interesting. It sounds like, I mean, if one of our tests just coincidentally caught that, we might want an explicit test that checks like to make sure node load with and without reset still returns the proper information once we have this caching system in place.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. But that sounds awesome. Sounds really close.
Yeah, and the another thing. Oh, sorry.
Can somebody describe what the implications of this issue are? Is this just a back-end performance thing? Because I don't understand this issue.
So the idea with this is that it will allow you to, it will cache fully loaded entities rather than what it does now is it only uses a static variable to cache it. So when you do like a node load, it gets the data for the node, but then it also has to get all the field data, and then it has to call hook node load on all of the nodes to actually make sure everything's filled in. And so what this will do is after that whole process, it'll put it in a cache table so that next time you node load the same node ID, it'll just grab it out of the cache rather than running through that whole process.
Yeah. So in theory, without it, like doing a node load queries from like at least 4 tables, maybe like in the vicinity of like 6 to 8, and then possibly more depending on the type of node it is. But this would make it so that all node loads would just be the one cache query. And it's not necessarily like Joseph's benchmarks that he posted, you know, it might not be like a complete home run like normally.
Well,
but there is an advantage that if you're using a cache system instead of loading from database tables, then you can offload cache systems to some other system besides MySQL. And so there is a peripheral benefit there as well that it makes it so that you can scale your sites larger if they're using cache systems, even if it's kind of the same number of queries.
With the benchmark, the max was about, or I mean, not the max, the total time it took to run the whole thing was about half as long. And what I was doing in the test was actually loading 1,000 nodes 1,000 times. So
what's the increment of time here? Is it seconds?
Yes.
In your benchmarking?
Down at the bottom with the, yeah, that's seconds.
Yeah. Maybe these nodes just also aren't very complex. And maybe if they were more complex, maybe if we had like a really complex paragraphs type system that you could see like a drastic improvement.
Yeah, I could set up something like that. Essentially what I did is, and I explained that in there, is I just did devel generate with 10,000 nodes from the 2 default node types.
But were there fields like images and tags and stuff generated?
Yeah, like the default fields that are with on posts.
Yeah.
So I could come up with something more sophisticated, but I was trying to throw something together real quick.
Yeah. What would be really interesting to see would be for people to apply this to their actual production sites and get some real world data as well.
I'd love to test this.
Yeah, and one thing that we discussed real briefly back at the beginning of this issue, because it's really old, so it's had some like discussions from ages ago, is that I find it a little bit weird that the field cache is still there in addition to the entity cache. Like they're pretty redundant with each other. But I see from this implementation that the way that if we keep the way that it is right now, entity cache is kind of an opt-in system where you have to say, I want to have my custom entity also use the entity cache, as opposed to it just being automatically available all the time. So that could make it be a good justification for why we want to keep the field cache in addition to the entity cache. But I really can't, I don't know, it seems really weird that we have, these layers of caching that might not be super beneficial.
What I did with the core entities is I did, so it is an opt-in for entity cache and an opt-out for field cache. And so what I did is I added the 2 entries to all 5 of the core entities so that it would opt in to entity and opt out of field caching.
Oh, well, that's nice. So at least we don't have it in core.
Right.
I didn't know that. That's great.
Yeah. So
I didn't know that you could.
I didn't want to chop out the field cache system in case people actually wanted it.
Yeah, we might want to do that in a follow-up issue where we have more of a discussion about, like, is anybody using field cache? Is it really important that we keep it before we remove it, especially if we're going to do it in a minor version?
Yeah.
But my instinct is, like, I would love to get rid of field cache and make entity cache on by default for everything. And just for simplicity, it seems like.
Right. Well,
but I don't want to do it and break anything.
The problem with entity cache, the way it works now, and like the way it worked in Drupal 7, was the module providing the entity had to create a table for the cache to be in, or a memcache bucket if you were using that. And if you don't create that table or bucket, then you get errors when it tries to access the cache. So yeah, unless we want to come up with some system that automatically creates and deletes tables as it finds your entity info.
Is the structure specific to the entity?
No, it's just it's exactly the same structure as all the rest of the cache tables.
Then why not we just have like a cache that has all of them?
Like,
so yeah, my first reaction is like, if the table is missing for a certain entity and we try to access it, why not create it on the spot if it doesn't exist? If nothing special needs to be done.
I was thinking we just have one table for all the entities.
Or that.
Okay, I don't know. That could be.
We could talk about it in the issue.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It could be possible. Like, I think you could use, since we have an entity module now, like Drupal 7 didn't have an entity module in core, it didn't have anything that actually managed the entities themselves. You could, in theory, use hook modules enabled, check if a module provides a new entity type, and then create the table.
But why do we use separate tables for each one if they're all the same?
It might be good just to separate the buckets. Like, there could be a lot of entities of a lot of different types.
Size.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was kind of what I was thinking, is like, if we just used one, then it would
be huge.
Yeah.
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 They'd basically duplicate all your entity tables and all your field tables into that.
Yeah.
And I have a site that I work on that I know would have, like, if that was done that way, we would have a single table that's over 200 gigabytes.
Always still be big anyway, but slightly less big.
Well, let's continue talking about that one in the issue. It's still really exciting to see that one move forward after so long. So thank you, Joseph, for your work on that.
While we're here on that, just the very last thing, just for my benefit, what would be the use case of keeping the separate field caches? So is it, for example, like when used with a practical example, if I'm using a view that spits out specific fields, that's when it was going to be used, whereas the entity caches for when displaying full entities in the same thing? Would that be it, or?
Currently, if you use a view, it loads the whole node, even if you just pull out 1 or 2 fields. And so it doesn't matter whether you use a display mode or pull out 1 field, it'll always load the whole node every time. And so I can't think of any situation where the field cache is used outside of a node load. It's almost always, I mean, as far as I know, always
outside of an
just
entity load.
just used as part of the entity load, then it says, okay, let's get the fields from the cache. So as far as I can see, they're like completely redundant. If we could make it so that entity cache was available on all entities, but right now it's not necessarily the case. So for ones that are contrib, like maybe, I don't know if UberCart makes its own entities or something like that, but flag module might be a good example, where it's not expecting the entity to be cached, and so it might be making some assumptions
Right.
about the way that it works.
Yeah, that was,
And if
and
it-
that was
Sorry, go
another
ahead.
reason I didn't want to make it default on for everything, because
I think we could also
Otherwise-
we could ship it this way and like let people test it for like a year, and then we could revisit to the ability of removing the field level cache. Like
Yeah.
I think like even though I really want to like make things nice and orderly, the risk of like things breaking is pretty high.
Yeah.
to take stuff out. So
Are any of these changes that we're discussing 2.0 material or no? Okay.
Deprecating or removing field cache, maybe, but
Already. Yeah.
but adding entity cache, especially the way Joseph has done it so far, is like it's super safe.
yeah, when this goes out, it should not affect any of your sites at all.
It would affect them in a nice way.
faster.
Yes, yeah,
Faster,
well,
exactly.
in theory, they'll be faster.
Yeah.
But I took all the chunks and wrapped it like if this is in your entity info, so that until you
Yeah.
clear caches and actually get your new entity info in, like there should be no errors.
And I take it the larger the site with more nodes and things like that, the better, the more the benefit, right?
Hey, Joseph, as somebody who might be writing the release for the blog post for the next release, if you could have a short summary of like what this does in the issue that I could just cut and paste, that would be great.
In layman's terms, yeah.
Right, that the average user would understand. Yeah.
That's actually why I asked, like, for real life example, like the views association in my head of what that would mean. But yeah. Sounds awesome.
Okay. Anything else for 115? You guys would like to bring up? Kind of running a little long here. I think we started late too, so. Okay, next up, we've got just general discussion and Q&A section. Tim has some questions about Gitter and the Dragon bot that lives inside of the chat. Tim, do you have?
We just, David Radcliffe has been doing some work on that, and the only thing holding him up from sort of fixing it is access to the Redis database. So if you could just ping me or whoever, who is that, you or Nate,
Justin.
or Justin that has to help?
Yeah, me, Justin's here, so he also could help with that a little bit. I'm not really familiar with how to dump a Redis database, but I bet it's not very hard.
If it's right, if you can, I don't know if you can give us access, or if you can't do that, to create a dump, whatever. And yeah, and I think David Radcliffe could probably get the Gitter thing going, or the Dragon bot fixed pretty quickly. He's got time right now. He just needs the database.
And where does he have a plan to move it to another service? Like,
So I checked to see if he was available to talk to you. I'm pretty sure that we had a discussion that he was on about a month or two ago, and there was some discussion about setting up one of those, what's the service?
Heroku.
Yes, the Heroku for it, and I think he's got it all ready to go. You know.
Yep.
All he-
That's the last. Yeah, that's the last I remember as well. It was set up,
Okay.
and actually we were testing at some point. We had two bots.
Yeah.
So all we need to do now is migrate the data from the current one to the new one, disable the old one, have the new one running. That's it.
Justin, anything you want to say?
We have a Redis database.
That
Yeah,
was a good
On
one.
the
Yeah,
CI
bot.
server.
Apparently, I barely know what that means, but that's what David Radcliffe told me to ask for.
Yeah, it's on the CI server that I don't think anyone's ever looked at except for Nate, who set it up like 5 years ago. And
Okay, I'll try to pull this out right now, Tim, and then let you have it.
That's all for this issue then.
Well, I'm happy to help if you want me to dump it and move it or something. That's fine. we can just let me know. I wasn't familiar that any of this existed, so but I can help if you want.
Jen, would you do the next section?
Oh, sure. I was updating bugs. Okay, let's see. General discussion, open QA. All right, this is exciting. So earlier this week, there was a whole bunch of, maybe even last week, a whole bunch of conversation around Gitter.
No, that's the first thing. That's what
Oh.
we were discussing. Now we're at the second point.
Wait, no, there was another Gitter thing.
Oh, yes, right.
That's
Yeah.
okay. Nobody put it on the agenda. We can talk about next week. All right, so the next thing, this is also exciting. Earlier this week, Peter, BWPN, asked who to contact for various different things. And we realized, or no, there was also an issue created by Jason in the backdropcms.org queue about who to contact for things, which is sort of have like a bunch of stuff like how do I get access to a Google document? How do I get a database dump of this Redis server? How do I send a MailChimp, whatever? But we just don't like, you have to ask somebody who knows, and you have to know who to ask who knows, which is really hard. And it sounds like we're coming up with some technical solutions like using 1Password to manage passwords, but we also need some human solutions like how do new people to the project know who to ask about like getting access to Twitter or something like that. So this fantastic recommendation was made to create a points of contact page. We bounced around various different ideas for names of it. Somebody recommended leadership, but I didn't really want to call it leadership because I don't necessarily think this stuff has anything to do with leading. It's more like volunteer opportunities. And so I wanted to be sort of more open to everyone, but if anyone has any ideas what we should call it, I'm calling it roles, responsibilities, and points of contact, but that's obviously open for change. Right now, the page, it exists on backdropcms.org underneath the leadership page in the hierarchy of the menu, but I don't think it needs to stay there if anyone has any better ideas. Let's just spray through it. And what it right now is going to list a list of like website administrators for each one of our properties. So if you have like a problem with the localized site, there will be a list here of who is responsible for the localized site. And what I thought I might do is generate a list of all of the user accounts that have admin access, the username, and then have that username linked to their contact page if they have a contact page. And that way people would be using the official contact forms to contact people in the ways that they're expecting to be contacted. And then we also, it was recommended that we add core repository information, but I think we might have that documented somewhere else. So I was going to try and see if I could dig that up and put it in here, or at least maybe link to another page where we might have it, all the information. Google Drive documents is something that comes up a lot for this meeting, like if you want to add agenda items. So I think having general people you can ask for access to it. I think the way it's set up is that anyone who has access can grant anyone else access. So I was just going to put a list of names of like these 8 people should have access, ask one of them. But if you know anyone else has access, they can also give you access. And then all of this external service thing too, like I think this might be where we can put the paragraph about like Backdrop uses 1Password. Thank you 1Password for giving us a free open source account. But here are all the people you can ask if you want to help with any of these things. So it's more like the person responsible than just like technical access. But as I mentioned before we started this meeting, trying to figure out all of the stuff that goes in this list.
It's going to take time.
It's going to take time. And so I have the page right now marked as incomplete, but as we think of things, anyone who has editorial access should feel free to go in and add stuff to this page. And if you think of something that we have and you don't know who has access to it, just put a question mark and eventually somebody will figure out who has access to it and fill it in. But yeah, I think it's a fantastic idea to document this and make just everything a little bit more open. That way, anyone who wants to help with anything will have one person or 2 people they can contact about it rather than being like ask into the ether of Gitter about who's in charge of it.
Another thing that was mentioned, another couple of things is like who has access to the API side to update it, stuff like that were coming up for Peter as he was trying to update things. Another one is who sort of like is looking after the contrib queue for new maintainers, you know, moving things forward. That would be me. possibly someone else in the future to help me out. And also, maybe we should also have preferable means of contact. For example, I prefer people that ping me on Gitter instead of trying to contact me via the contact form, like on the Backdrop CMS site, or an email or other means. So yeah, I'll be working on that as well, iteratively. I mean, we can sort of like improve as we go. That pace will have additions and what have you.
Okay, so would you rather have people ping you on Gitter than
Yes.
use your contact form? Okay, so maybe I won't put the automatic contact form link on the list, but I will put the list, and then I can afterwards say something like ping these people in Gitter, because if it's your username, that'll work.
Yes.
Although it could be that some people's Backdrop CMS.org name isn't the same as their GitHub name, and that might not match. So we'll have to wait. For now, it's probably fine. But once we get like our single sign-on thing working, we'll have the GitHub name, and we'll be able to be like, Gregory, ping Klonos, and we'll have all.
Yes.
But for now, we might have to fudge it a little bit.
Yeah. We may set preferences per person. Like we can link to the user account page on big.org, but each individual person can state what's their preferred version way of contacting them.
Yeah, maybe even in our user profile page, there's radio options or something that's like, use my contact form, ping me on Gitter, tweet at me, email me directly. I don't know, something.
Yes, things like that.
Yeah, good idea. I'm gonna forget that.
No, you're not. I'll remind you.
Is there an issue for that?
Yeah, we do.
Yes.
For modifying the contact form to have that? Is there an issue?
Yeah, modify your user profile form to ask people your preferred method of being contacted.
Okay.
But yeah, I think this is a fantastic idea. So Jason, thank you for bringing this up. That issue that you originally created, number 74 in the backdropcms.org queue, also included a section about adding a maintainers.txt file back to Backdrop core. I moved that issue over to the Backdrop core queue so that we could have the discussion over there. But everything else, I think we should address here with who to contact for what. And if we have anything else that comes up from that in that issue conversation about other things we can other things we might need to know for people who especially want to get involved with stuff, we should put that in this issue too. So if you do, like, I don't know how the maintainers thing is going to work out, but if you need to contact someone specifically about something in core, I mean, I would imagine you're not allowed to contact someone specifically about something in core. You'd have to create an issue. But if it turns out that you are, we should put that in here too. So whatever results we end up with from those conversations should all get added in here so that we have one place for everybody to find whoever it is they're trying to reach for whatever reason.
Yep. And I wonder what WordPress or Drupal are doing for the same thing. Like if they have a directory of contacts and for specific people.
Directory of contacts is a better name for this page.
See how I slid that in? It's like
okay, so does anyone have any hesitation starts creating this page? Because I just made it, but
I don't.
Okay.
But maybe we should ask each individual person before we add
their name
their
or
names.
their contact information.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but that would be easy because we'll do it over time. Is that okay? Yeah, that's it. We can contact them on Gitter.
So does that mean, so Gregory, I already put your name in this.
Put me everywhere.
Okay.
Put me anywhere you need me.
Yes. Exactly.
Okay, let's see who else is in here. Justin, it's okay if I put your name on here as the point of contact for server stuff. And what is your preferred method? Would you like to be pinged in Gitter or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Gitter. Trying to do better with GitHub, but I don't know. I still have all the notifications turned off, so that's not helping.
Yes, that's my problem as well. Emails and Gitter notifications. Sorry, GitHub notifications.
What about things that don't matter? Should we have a section for like? So there's things like people have like questions like, who manages the Pantheon stuff, and the answer is like, well, there isn't any Pantheon stuff that gets managed. It all goes through GitHub, but I still feel like that question is valid, right? So I feel like it might be good to have like an FAQ section at the bottom about like, does Backdrop have a Reddit account or something, just so that people know that no, it's just an individual person who took it on and it's this person or something.
Well, that or a catch-all where at the end it says, for anything not on this list, go to Getter and ask. And then,
Yeah, and add someone to add it.
or the forum, because I usually monitor. I'm the Gitter bot, and Tim is the forum bot. So
Yeah, okay, that's great. And then we could even create a channel that's like questions about how backdrop stuff is managed, or not a channel, a topic or something.
Yep.
And figure it out.
it doesn't have to be perfect. Like I understand it's a big undertaking. Taking it will take time. Slowly we'll get everything there eventually. People will be complaining about, hey, I can't find this. Add it there. It will be done.
Good, good.
I would like to bring up a final topic before we close it. We don't have to discuss it today, but I'll have to at least add it to that list. I realized that the community is growing, so maybe it's time that we discussed also the permissions for contrib maintainers thing. So after now we have
check GitHub stuff, figure out what we can do to make our lives easier.
As in be able to nominate owners for specific Git contrib projects, and then also have the bug squad be an owner or co-owner of everything, things like that. Or something like that.
Yeah, I don't remember. I went through this like, it was probably like 6 months ago now. It would be good if we could get some like API tools to fix everything that's already in there. But yeah, I think the way it's set up is that like the original creator should be the author. The bug squad and security team are both administrators. And then all of those people have commit access to the project.
So when I add people, when I invite them, there's two options. One is called authors and the other one is called owners or something like that. So I imagine owners also allows people to invite others. It's the highest level of sort of like the administrator of the whole organization.
Yeah, maybe that's it.
Yeah, and then authors have access to everything, as far as I know. And we have all people
also have the optionally like transfer their own project in. They can choose to like accidentally release their ownership of it. And I think that also has caught a bunch of people up. So I know we had an issue where it was like, use the bot to fix all of this, but even if we could just like use an API call once, like fix it like once a month or something, even if we can't get the bot to do it every time, that would be huge too, at least in terms of like making sure that everybody always has the access that they're supposed to have to it. But yeah, I think in general, it would be good to do a high level overview of like, has GitHub changed the way they do this recently? Is there something we could be doing better? Because I have no idea if it's changed since 6 months ago or not.
As I said, we don't have to come up with a solution right now. I just want it to be discussed eventually because the
Do we have an issue for this?
Maybe we do, but it's going to be a really old one. At the point when it was discussed, the decision off the top of my head was that it's too soon. We're a small community. There's no issue at this point. Everyone has access to everything. Sort of like, yeah, it was a trusting thing, but now we are growing. My concern is that we might have, overly eager people committing things and creating releases. And if you create a release that ends up in the project browser, so.
Yeah. Okay. Tim, it looks like you're adding new stuff. I don't know who was adding it. Somebody was adding new stuff to the issue, to the TBA section. Is there anything we need to talk about today?
No.
The recipe thing?
Sure. Well, okay. I'd added that before the meeting. I was just editing it a minute ago.
Okay.
I'll just explain it. I don't know if we have time to talk about it. Maybe somebody wants to talk to me about it after the call. It's an old outstanding issue, but it's current for me because I'm trying to move like features between multiple sites. And I've been experimenting with sort of config recipes that I can just sort of move from one site to another. But I'm running into the limitations of that. As I'm figuring out this for myself, I wouldn't mind be doing it, and like my config recipes, can I share these with other people? How would I do it? Because it's not a module, it's not an existing thing on GitHub. So basically, I'm just looking for advice on what other people think the best way right now to do things. Like, if I want an FAQ feature, then I want to move from one site to another, and I want to do this in a way that I can share with other people other than myself. What do people think? Should I be making a module for that, like an FAQ module that creates a content type? Or
I haven't
we
revisited.
talk briefly about it now. We could postpone it, or people could talk to me offline about it.
Yeah, just really shortly, like maybe in the next 5 minutes, if we have that. Off of the top of my head again, with regards to the respective issue about recipes that we started, I guess the decision was made temporarily, at least, was that these things do not have to be projects, they would be copy-paste things. But
Well,
yeah,
we
it
still are
was,
facing limitations of the config importer, because the way it
Yeah.
works right now is it's assumed it's either everything or nothing. And so, or sorry, everything or one thing. And so
Yes.
if you give it one thing and it doesn't have the things that's required to already have, it doesn't work. And so there's like this very specific order of operations.
Right.
The only success I've had with this is with the Biblio module, which required like an entity type, 100 fields, a bunch of views. And it, in the installer section of that module, it like deliberately was like, install these config files, then install these config files, because it had to create that sequence in order to get the order correct, in order to do the installation. And it would be really good if we could have something that worked more like the features module, where you could just throw in all of your config files and it would know what order it needed to install them through. And it could just batch through that subset of files and add them or update whatever's on your site. That doesn't exist right now.
Sure.
So I think immediately, whatever you're doing right now, Tim, is probably the only thing you can do, because there isn't a better solution. But if you wanted to look at like what happened in that Biblio module for like how it manually installed those, that might be a good reference for another option. I don't think it's the best path forward. I think we need something more like features that already knows those dependencies and how to put it together.
So one thing is, I created like a content type and a view feature for, like, it's an FAQ. And I created a content type, some field instances, and a view, right? And I found that I couldn't just randomly upload those one at a time, because they had to be in an order.
Yep.
But I found that if I exported all of my config, dropped those into it, then re-imported it, and just installed it, then it would do it itself. So if there were a way to automate it, that would be great. But again, that's hard to share with anybody else right now. On the other hand, I could just create a module that does this, but I don't know if that's frowned upon. Is it frowned upon to like have a contrib module that just creates a content type?
No, I mean, that's how content types were created, like back in Drupal 4.
Sure.
Right? And there is like an FAQ module, I think, for Drupal that does this, but it just does it where, rather than having like a custom content type, which is what you make when you use the UI, it's like a module defined content type, like blog, blog module. It's very similar to what we have now. I think I don't necessarily see a downside to that. For if you needed to share your thing right now, I think that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Longer term, and I don't know if this is necessarily relevant to this conversation, I would love to see a solution, or maybe a solution that would be like upload a set of config files that would do exactly what you described, Tim, and like export everything, new stuff into it and import it back in, or at least be able to handle just a subset.
So the existing importer that does the full config import, it knows what the order of operations to do is, right?
Right.
Could we just use that same code?
Yeah.
Basically build the group importer?
Yeah.
Yes, I think the problem is that right now, I'm sure you could reuse the code, right? But it doesn't work really well, right, the way it's set up now. But
yeah, we just need to add.
Right, a new feature probably could use that code.
Yeah. So I don't think there's a good solution right now, Tim. I think if you want to write a module, that's totally fine. I also think what we could do is document somewhere, I don't know, the forum or the user guide that would say like, hey, if you want to import 8 config files, step 1, export your whole site. Step 2, put them in. Step 3, import the whole thing. And that's probably enough to at least help everyone else in the world learn what you already know.
If today I wanted to share something with other Backdrop users, I see two choices. One of which is to just have a project, which is just some fold directories with a bunch of config files and instructions on how to do that.
Yeah.
So if I want to do that, can I do that in the contrib GitHub issue queue, or do I just put that on my own GitHub account and share it that way? Because it's not, it doesn't fit into the existing category of projects.
Yeah, I would be okay with you doing it in contrib, but what I would do is make sure that the type definition at the top of the file, put in something like type equals recipe. So it's not modular theme or layout. If the only thing in that file are those exports, but if that is a module, you could just release it.
Okay. And it would be open, and then that was the other question. The other way to do this would be to actually create a contrib module, which does this, and that is also okay. Any thoughts on, like, do we want to namespace that specially for that kind of thing, or just create it?
I mean, so my original thought was recipes. I also like the word features. It's just that word is very, has a lot of meanings already.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, we could have kind of a standard that if you're going to do this, like just a feature type module, that you name it a certain way, like recipe colon what it is. That way they're easily sort of distinguished from other kinds of modules. But I don't know, maybe that's not necessary.
I would like to add two things. Maybe we're running late.
Yep, and then I'm done then.
Yes, so really quick, we don't have to discuss those. One, the specific issue where you mentioned backup and migrate and configuration import, it might be so that backup and migrate was working properly in D7 because all it had to do was restore the database, but we have to account for configuration. So it might be specific to that module, and we might need to solve it there. Maybe things need to be imported at the same time so that the database import doesn't complain about missing configuration and the other way around. And what was the second thing that I wanted to say? Damn it, lost my train of thought. Sorry, guys.
Okay.
If I remember it, I'll let you know. Yeah.
For now, if I did do a contrib module, I don't know. I don't have a naming scheme for that yet, so I would just do it generically. But I'm open to input on that. And I probably, before I did this, I'd at least in Gitter one more time ask if people have input.
I recall what I wanted to say. I can't remember issues off the top of my head. There is an existing issue about the order in which modules are being enabled is problematic. So I can't find the ticket number right now, but there is one. There is not a ticket about, but I'm sure, sorry, let me rephrase that. There's an issue that I'm not sure if there's a ticket for, but it has been mentioned before. It's that I'm not sure that you can have dependencies on themes for modules or for layouts, or, you know, like a mix and match of dependencies between things. So we need to make sure that layouts can depend on modules, modules on layouts, themes on layouts, and so on and so forth. I don't
think we can have any dependencies on any of those, or everything. Like, the whole point is that you can change your theme and you don't need specific layouts. Like,
yeah, but it will be optional. We don't have dependencies, as in dependencies array on the .info file that should be respected, as in certain modules require certain layouts, or certain profiles
require certain layouts, or they're written wrong.
like dashboard depends on a layout, Jen, so it's possible.
Recipes, it's a different thing, but I don't think we should be like messing up the way the whole system is designed to work, where we've removed all the dependencies and allowed people to add them back in.
Yeah, so I can see how profiles have a install hook thing and they can do things, but as Nate just said, for example, the dashboard module relies on a specific layout.
Why would a module ever rely on a specific layout?
Because we don't say that we would force that, but if people would,
I don't think
like
we should
that,
support it.
Why?
Because there's no use case for it.
I think there have been. I think twice. Am I right, Tim? I think it was you that created a.
Well, sure, and flexible. I mean, I'm finding ways around that, although I don't know if they're ideal. Nate just brought up like the dashboard module, right?
We shouldn't add things to core that there's no use case for. I think that's just bad design. But if there is a use case, then let's talk about that. But like,
well, there are. I mean, so I don't know if it's exactly that, and I'm learning a lot. So I might have use cases that there are better ways around. But one of the things I ran into with my theme, right, is like, I want a layout other than the default. In Drupal, and we've talked about this before, in Drupal 7, you could affect the layout with the theme.
Right.
And there are like things I don't like about the current default layout. And I'd love to create a theme that's able to change those. And I don't know how to do that. And there might be a better way than requiring a template. That was my initial solution.
Yeah. So, I mean, the way it's the same with anything else in a theme. Like the way a theme works is like you can provide template files that will be used if the thing they're overriding exists and won't be used if the thing they're overriding doesn't exist. So it's exactly the same whether it's like, oh, I'm providing a template file for a content type named article, but that existed in Drupal 7, it doesn't exist in Backdrop. That file is still in my theme. My theme doesn't depend on there being a content type named article. If the article type is there, it'll use it. If the article type isn't there, it doesn't use it. It's exactly the same with layouts. Like you have a layout called Boxen. If your site uses it, your theme will override it. If your site doesn't use it, your theme won't override it because it doesn't exist. But there's a separation there of like needing to have like it's everything in a theme optionally overrides things that may or may not exist. But I think the module layout thing, that's the thing that there might like be a use case for that you guys think exists that I don't think exists.
I can't remember the exact use case, but team created, I think, a theme. I can't remember what you call it, and then a matching. Yes, and then a matching layout project for it. So it would be good if.
At the time, that was the only solution I could envision. Since then, I've been coming up with other solutions to solve the problems. I took that layout out of the theme because I don't feel like I need it anymore. But there are still some problems that I'm trying to solve.
Well, I think like, so in Drupal that happened too, right? Where there was a theme called Radix and they created a module called Radix Layouts.
Exactly.
And they recommended like, you can use things together if you want, but I use the Radix Layouts module all the time and I don't use the Radix theme very often. And you can use Radix theme without, like, there's no dependencies there. It's just like, this is a set of layouts you can use or not. And this is a theme that you can use or not. And they're all optional. And you could like, if you created an install profile, the install profile could like require all of them. Or if you had, I don't know, a custom module that you could run through and like.
So part of how I've solved this problem now is that in my install profile, I'm moving some blocks around using the hook install in the install profile. And I'd love to be able to do, but what if I wanted to do that with somebody that has an existing site, right? And as far as I know, and the research I've done recently, you can't run hook install on a theme. Is that correct? So I can't sort of.
Yes, I think yes.
Don't know about that, but even if you could, there's no way you would, like even in Drupal 7, there's no way you could know what any of the region names.
That's probably true.
Because they probably, like they might not have the layouts, they might not have the region names.
Well, I could do kind of an if, couldn't I? Like if you're using this, if you're still using the default theme, then go ahead and do this.
Yeah, I still have.
Also, placements wouldn't have anything to do with the link. It would have to be, if you're using layout X, then whatever. But it would still have to be like contingent, not dependent.
Sure.
I haven't fleshed everything out, but it sounded to me from what Tim was expressing over the past few months, I think, when not only Tim but others as well, that if you wanted to do something with a theme and a layout, you would have to create a profile for it to wrap things around them. And I would like it to not depend on, like, we're asking people that want to sort of like have a module and a theme core sort of like work. We were telling them, all right, you need to create a profile for them, which is an additional task. And I was thinking like if we supported dependencies, then it would take one.
I don't think there's a use case for supporting dependencies. It sounds like all of the problems we've run into so far are just like, layouts are weird because they used to be part of the theme and now they're not. And we need like better documentation on like how to override layout templates in your theme or something so that people understand that they work just like everything else now, whereas before the theme was the layout. And I don't know what the other things are with like layouts and like there might be other, it sounds like there was a use case a while ago that we don't know what it is, but I definitely think like our first go-to shouldn't be like, let's put stuff in core that'll let people break everything. It should be like, wait, why is this needed? And if there is a problem with the way themes work, let's like fix that. Or if there's a problem with the documentation, let's fix that. But let's not just like break everything because people don't want to have to create install profiles, or because we don't want people to have to create install profiles. Like, I think there's probably something else wrong that leads us there.
Sure.
Yeah.
I have to go. I'll just say Gregory is
I have to go as
representing, right, he's representing problems that I've been having, but
But I think it's not,
I've been learning and getting better solutions. So
yeah.
I don't feel like I'm not asking for dependencies right now, but I am exploring
Yeah.
like how to best do what I'm trying to do.
My only concern is that you are finding solutions or workarounds, as in, because you said better solutions, better or just
Well,
existing ones
A little bit
faster?
both. I'm finding workarounds, but I am thinking about solutions and proposing
Okay, fair
them.
enough.
But first of it is like I want to experiment with the workarounds so I get a better sense of like what the pros and cons are before I suggest the solution.
Yeah, I think we shouldn't just jump
Yep.
to a solution.
Yeah.
Especially if like we don't understand how all the pieces adequately interact. Like, I also would love to see the exact problem you're facing rather than talking about it like in theory, because I feel like my theories and your theories might not be the same. We might be not be talking about the same things.
Agreed.
Okay.
Bundling up.
Yeah, and I have to go to work as well, so maybe we should wrap this up.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, everyone. Yeah, great week this past week. And yeah, see you guys on the internet.
Yep.
So,
All right.
bye.
See you guys. Bye.
Bye.